I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBM, we're talking about a powerful book, a life-changing book. It is called Mikey Can't Help It. It's part of the Mama Bulldog series. It is a heartfelt children's story that explores special needs, sibling emotions, and family understanding through lovable bulldog characters. It is written by one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite guests. She's also an educational advocate. Her name is Tracey Tozier. And in the book, she shines a compassionate light on what it's really like when a child doesn't, quote unquote, fit in at school or in public, and how families learn to cope, adapt, and grow stronger together. This powerful and relatable book gives parents, children, and educators the language and the tools needed to talk about inclusion, empathy, and emotional resilience. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her on TV today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Tracey, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me on, Logan.
It's an honor to have you back on the show. This book is terrific. Tell us a little bit about Mikey and why he doesn't fit in and why he is a little bit different than a lot of kids his age.
Mikey has profound autism. He's mostly nonverbal, and he has a lot of sensory issues. So he behaves in ways that seem strange to neurotypical folks in the book. And the kids, his siblings, Benny and Fiona, get teased about him at school. And Papa Bulldog wonders why Mama can't stop his uncontrollable, lengthy tantrums that he has at home. And
he's just not quite doing what other kids do at his age, and he's different. And this is what I love about your book, and it's a word or a phrase you just threw in right now that I'm not really that familiar with, but I've heard it before, and it reinforces it when I hear you talk about it, and that's neurotypical. And these are the kind of tools and language we'll be equipped with when reading your books. So neurotypical is such a better term than saying normal or average, right? And it's such an empowering term, right? And so many kids and parents and educators really don't know to use those words, right?
Exactly. And they don't really understand what neurodivergent means, that it's not just a behavior or a mood or a feeling. It's a whole other way of seeing the world and experiencing the world.
Exactly. And just because Mikey's not exactly like you and me or Fiona or Benny, you know, Mikey has his own way and he should be appreciated for who he is. And I think that's an important message as well. Now, tell us a little bit about this series, the Mama Bulldog series. There's 3 books in it so far?
Yes.
Tell us about the books.
My books are meant to educate and empower both parents and children. They're meant for parents to read to children, and the parents learn some things along the way, and so do the kids, about how to parent kids who have learning differences, and how to give their children language to talk about what's happening in the family. Because oftentimes siblings feel things very deeply and they hurt quietly, but they don't have the language to express what they're feeling. And sometimes that can come out sideways if they don't have the proper language to express what's going on.
Exactly. They don't mean to be mean. They often just don't understand what's going on. And like you said, empowering them with the right language and some context is important as well. Now, the first book in the series is Fiona Finds What's Fair.
Benny Speaks Up, but
Benny Speaks Up, either way. Okay, let's talk about Benny Speaks Up. Tell us a little bit about that book and how it empowers children.
Benny Speaks Up is about a little bulldog who's afraid to advocate for himself at school. His special education teacher has disappeared. He doesn't know where she's gone, and he's afraid he's going to fail his math test. And his mama gives him the tools to advocate for himself. And we learn the difference between being timid and silent, being angry and aggressive, or being calm and assertive. And of course, Benny tries advocating for himself at school in the book, and it goes really well. And he grows up a little bit that day. And he's proud of himself, and his mother's proud of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning to speak up for yourself is a lesson that all of us need, because you can be
Yes.
frustrated, you can be angry, you can be whatever your reaction is, but you need to speak up. You need to let people know what your needs are, what your wants are, and what your feelings are at times.
Exactly.
And Fiona Finds What's Fair is a great book as well because she learns about special accommodations in many ways, right?
Yes. Benny has an IEP in his book, an individual education program, which means specially designed instruction, or what we used to call special ed. And Fiona has a 504 plan, which is a term for in-classroom accommodations, like having extra time on a test, or preferential seating to be near the teacher or near the blackboard or the whiteboard, as it is these days. And Fiona copes with bullying. Her principal threatens to take her 504 plan away from her, and Mama Bulldog has to go to the superintendent and advocate with him to have her tested. And she ends up qualifying for her 504 plan. But then one of her classmates stands up and says, it's not fair that Fiona and Abby get to leave the room and go to a special room for testing and have extra time. That's not fair. So Fiona uses some gentle stories and some humor to explain that fair isn't everybody getting exactly the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need to learn.
Wait, so Fiona finds what's fair, and it's not necessarily that everybody gets the same thing. Everybody gets what they need, and that's an important message for sure. Now, it's all of the characters are in book 3, Benny, Fiona, and of course, Mikey. They're siblings.
Yes.
Benny and Fiona react, and they mirror the reactions of many siblings in real life to Mikey's issues. Talk to us a little bit about how they deal with Mikey's issues.
Well, at first, they're embarrassed and even a little bit ashamed of Mikey when he behaves strangely in public, because they're getting teased by their friends about him. And they really wish that he could act more like a typical puppy. And Mama Bulldog has to explain that Mikey can't help it. If he could act like a typical puppy, he would. But there's something going on in his brain that prevents him from doing that. And Mama takes the whole family to a psychologist who helps them all begin to understand how to communicate with Mikey in a way that he can understand better what they want from him. And also, the kids get permission from the psychologist and then from their parents to use the words autism and autistic when talking about their brother's behavior in public or at school. And it stops a lot of the bullying, and it helps the kids not have to internalize that shame or embarrassment. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Their brother is autistic.
Exactly. And it's very, very empowering to families as well, who are going through similar issues, to realize that it's probably a good idea to get a third party involved. It's probably a good idea to sit down with a therapist, because we don't necessarily have the equipment we need to deal with the normal frustrations that children might have when dealing with a neurodivergent sibling. So I think that's a great key bit of advice. And all of the advice, all of the language, all of the tools that you empower people with are kind of embedded throughout the stories. And I think that is really, really great. How do you envision parents using this book as a conversation starter at home?
I envision them reading the book and stopping along the way to say, have you ever felt this way about your brother when he did X, Y, or Z? and letting the kids know that their feelings are very normal and okay to have, but that it's not okay to yell at your special needs sibling, or join your friends in teasing them. Certainly, it's okay to speak up for your sibling and say, "Hey, he can't help it. He has autism."
And it's a issue that more and more families seem to be dealing with these days. Of course, it's a spectrum disorder. Some people have it very profoundly, like Mikey. Other people have it very minimally. But it's certainly a great topic to address in a children's book. What misconceptions about special needs did you want to gently challenge when writing this book?
I wanted to challenge the misconception that many people still have, which is that if you have a child with special needs, you should just keep them home and keep them out of the public eye and not do things with them and not expose them to, overstimulating situations, or, expect them to adapt to the neurotypical world. But my mother-in-law used to say, they came to live with you in this world. You can't change the whole world to adapt to them.
Right.
So
You can kind of change the whole world, and they're doing that a little in baby steps, at least, by putting out this information out there and us
yes.
having a conversation like this today.
Mhm.
You know, with a magic wand, you can't change the world, but with one open mind at a time, you can. And I think that's what's
Mhm.
important about your books. And I'm going to ask you, how early do you feel children should be introduced to conversations about inclusion and empathy?
I think as soon as they can understand language,
Mm.
they can learn that, they don't like it if somebody says something mean to them, or, does something mean to them. So how do they think someone else feels if they say or do something mean to someone else? I think it's very important from the time that they can, you know, first understand, social interactions. I started.
If you want to combat bullying, they need to know right away that this is mean, this is not nice. How would you feel if you were in that situation? And
Mhm.
I think those are important conversations. And for some reason, bullies always seem to have the biggest voice in the crowd, and people are afraid to go against them because everybody is afraid they'll be the bully's next target, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the what I teach in all three books actually is that if you stand up to a bully, chances are much better than not that they're going to back down because they're not used to being confronted or called out on their behavior.
Exactly. You got to speak up for yourself. You got to stand up to bullies. Two important lessons, many important lessons in this book, in these books, I
Mhm.
should say. Your background is in clinical social work,
Yes.
and some of these issues have affected your family as well. Talk to us about
Mhm.
how that informed the stories and motivated you as a storyteller.
This book really is pulled from an incident that happened when my daughter Fiona was about 4 years old and her brother was 2, and we were on the playground at school. Kids in Belgium start preschool at a very young age, and a little boy came up to my daughter and said, "You've got a funny brother. He acts weird," stuff like that. And she balled up her little fists and she got in this kid's face and she said, "Don't you talk mean about my brother." But then she turned right around in the next breath and said to her brother, "Why can't you just act normal?" And it just
Normal
broke my heart.
frustration. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that shame and embarrassment that it's normal for kids to feel.
Yeah.
But I had to take her aside and calm them both down and then explain that he can't act like you or Billy or Johnny or everybody else. If he could, he would,
Right.
but he's wired differently. And there's nothing bad about that, but it's just different. And we need to learn to accept that he's not going to behave like everybody else on the playground or at school.
Exactly. Those are very, very vital lessons born out of real life, as we mentioned. Before we leave you today, I wanted to ask you what's next for the Mama Bulldog series.
I've already written the rough draft and it's in editing for a book about ADHD.
Hmm.
And it takes a character that we meet in Fiona Finds What's Fair. We meet Fiona's friend Abby, who has ADHD. But in the next book, we focus on Abby and her family, her mother and her brother. And the mother is going to have ADHD mixed type. The brother is going to have ADHD primarily hyperactive and impulsive type. And Abby has ADHD primarily inattentive type.
Wonderful.
So
You're
Mama
educating me right
Bulldogs,
now because I didn't realize there are that many different types of ADHD. And again,
if
that's
you,
what's important about your books. It's educating parents and children and educators.
right. And the whole idea that a lot of these conditions are genetic, they're inherited, and that the parents can be affected as much as the children can. But oftentimes they weren't diagnosed because they grew up in an era where, you know, your behavior was just odd or you were quirky. And there was no diagnosis, there was no known help available. So parents have just learned to cope the best they can with whatever it is that they're dealing with. And in this case, Carrie, your mother, has, problems with executive functioning, getting organized, parenting discipline, keeping things where she can find them, all kinds of things that many of us struggle with every day, but we don't realize that they might be ADHD.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to have to read that book very closely. I might self-diagnose after reading it for sure. Wonderful. The name of the series is the Mama Bulldog series. There are 3 books in it so far. Mikey Can't Help It, Fiona Finds What's Fair, and Benny Speaks Up. They are powerful children's stories about empathy, inclusion, and learning to love through life's toughest family challenges. Tracey, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Logan.
I appreciate your time, your insight, and wonderful work on these books. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford for the Global Book Network. So long for now.